is email notifications. So when you update portions of the website would do all the rest, send notifications out to residents by email or text message. Another one is Google Analytics that I really like, because this solution, you want to understand how it evolves long term. The needs for residents, of course, change. The duties for staff, the hats they wear, that changes. So how can the solution evolve based on those processes? And what websites or what part of the website that residents are accessing, so we can really give them a quicker way to information. If we're looking for ordinances, all of a sudden, well, we can flag that during the Google Analytics and say, okay, well, we need another place to put these different type of information so residents can access it quicker. So the goal really of the solution is not to eliminate the human touch, making sure that residents can still communicate with you, be involved with you, but also give them easier access to get information so your staff can work easier based on the project that they're working on, so they're not cluttered with phone calls and emails. And then the other thing on the other side, this solution is going to be very secure. We really touched on ADA compliance. SSL certificates for security websites is very important to us. And then daily offsite backup, so your website will save 99.9% of the time. That was very quick. Is there anything else that you gentlemen would like to share that you would like to know, or was that a good brief overall summary?
Council, you have information in your packets regarding Civic Plus. We've had that information now for a few months. If you have questions, now is the time to ask.
Can you tell us about the build time?
Here. Just pass that microphone down.
Hi, Richard. This is Jill Sherman. Can you tell us about the build time?
Hey, Jill.
Hi. Can you tell us about the build time and the process?
Yeah. Yes, of course, of course. So the process right now, we're looking between 12 and 15 weeks for the build. And that build does require a lot of time on your end, because we're understanding what type of page migration, how much content you have on the website, and what that's going to look like. The input that we would really need from you is, what type of information, pictures that we can make this the best digital representation of prior. So we go through each one of these steps in phases. I believe there's 6 phases might be outlined in the proposal. But the first one is, of course, strategic initiatives. So, what's your goal of this website? What do you want to solve with this? And then we'll build that throughout the weeks on moving forward on strategic initiatives, implementation, content migration, and then, of course, launch of the website.
Thank you, Richard. We have a follow-up?
Of course.
All right. Ms. Sherman.
Can you explain on I understand visual
Close.
presentation. I understand visual presentation, strategic initiative. Who and how will you pull that information? What is the typical process there?
Sure. So typical process, we always like to get somebody assigned that's an internal staff member to be the head coordinator for this project. So with them, I'd recommend, Jill, you sound like you'd be a perfect candidate for that. You really know what the residents are looking for. You may know what the residents are, maybe need as far as information. But better yet, you have an expert view on, what tourists and residents can really expect when they come to the website. So maybe fantastic landmarks or, pictures that we can really bring out. So really just leverage your expertise on what you put there, but we'll already go through the website and look at the content that's already there. So we'll say, hey, Jill, we noticed that there's X amount of pages on the website. Here's all the content we found to be relevant. What are your thoughts? Okay, Jill, we found all these different pictures for prior. What are your thoughts? What do you really want to bring to the forefront? What type of information is going to be really important to the city and its residents?
Okay, very good.
So that's really a way to, okay.
When you've worked with other cities to build, who has been that point of contact that has done this for you?
It varies, especially in my experience. It really varies. I've seen clerks be the head project liaison for these. I've seen administrators be the head project. I've seen chief information officers, communications directors. So it really kind of depends on who you have available, who may have the best expertise. But I always like, of course, Brooke might be a perfect example because he really knows what residents they're looking for. But also clerks I've seen be really good at project liaison. They always seem like they're really hub for information. They're always on the front line, dealing with phone calls and residents and bad emails. So that could be also a really good route to explore.
So once all of the information is compiled, tell us about the training that takes place so that internal staff can communicate with the public.
Okay, so that might be a few things to unpack. So I'll start with the training, and we'll kind of build on top of there. So the training includes one day, which is about 8 hours of training, and they'll break that up into 2-hour blocks, because we found, of course, any more than 2 hours, of course, you're going to get breathless and may not absorb all the information. So we'll break that up into, how we can do, I think the first phase is administration, so, your logins, your passwords, understanding how the site is broken up into key pieces. And then they'll do 2 hours of different tools, how to maintain those, and then how to create pages, alerts, etc. So when that portion happens, after you're trained, then moving forward, of course, there's continuing training, of course, with those online videos and tutorials. Now, the second part of your question, Jill, can you repeat that one more time?
What was it? Well, I think it was the point of contact. So the training happens, and then internal staff being that point of contact. How many usually are communicating with the public? I don't think that was my initial question, but that's another question.
Okay. I've seen that very too. That's been my experience. With how easy it is to maintain the site, maybe 1 or 2 users would be fantastic. In the training, you can set up to 8 people. So it depends on, which departments you want to have access to the website, which particular people you want access to maybe certain modules. So there's a permission level based system on who you want to have access to where and what for. When we think about user level who wants to send out the communication, you can have unlimited people. Probably best practice, they have maybe 2 or 3. If it's important information, maybe 1 person for alerts.
Thank you.
Of course.
So, this is Mayor Richard. Some of our folks are fairly savvy. Some of us are dinosaurs, so you're talking to a dinosaur about the technology stuff. The training that goes on, it's going to be dialed in to the needs of the system, but also dialed into the needs of our people. I'm having to assume that, correct?
That is absolutely correct, yes. That's absolutely correct. I mean, this solution is extremely for the residents, what they're looking for, what they need, how can we help them.
Do you have any war stories to share in that regard?
I wouldn't say maybe war stories, but I did come across, I work in a home office, so we're based out of Manhattan, Kansas, and I like to understand how each department works internally for us, and then how those departments, of course, work with our clients. And so I also look at a lot of different websites, how they're maintained, how they went through the training, who the admin staff was, how they built it, and how they, keep it updated. And one of the things that, I most commonly see, mainly in larger, populations, let's say between 50,000 and 300,000, that they have too many people with different access to parts of the website. They haven't really utilized those permission levels. So when I look at the website at the initial launch, it looks fantastic. Everything is laid out perfectly, information is laid out perfectly, and then over time, all these, what they say, too many cooks in the kitchen, start to add different pictures in places that it doesn't belong, information that doesn't belong, and then it becomes difficult for residents to find that information because the person that added the information wasn't in the training, and then the account manager has to reach out and say, hey, best practice as far as navigation, we noticed that your website is not looking like it used to. So I wouldn't say that's a war story, but long-term maintenance, something to keep in mind. Have a particular group set of people that do, maintain information for residents, like Jill was asking, 2 or 3 or 4, and then if they turn over, if they leave, Once you bring the next person in, that's where ongoing training comes into place. Making sure that new person can still maintain this part of the website, make sure that it still stays clean, easy to navigate, and still very easy to look at when residents come to view it. Outside of that, no real war stories. I mean, our solutions are pretty awesome.
So our culture in Pryor, Oklahoma is a culture that we have a website. It's not very user-friendly. And so we've developed a culture over time of really not using the capabilities of the website that we have. And the training, in my opinion, is one of the more important components of it. If we decide to invest in this product, that training component is something that will become very important. We have several department heads who are sitting in the gallery today, and each one of them have probably differing and varying views about how we would utilize a new website. Can you give us a bit of a vision about, let's say, how a police department would use this website?
So I've seen a couple of different instances with that, and I'll kind of range it from small rural populations to very large ones. I've seen small populations use just the alert center and a page to push out information from a police department, or road closures, snow alerts, boil water alerts, car break-ins, those things. I've also seen them use our online form center to create forms for house checks or resident complaints or requests. And I've also seen very large populations have their whole different police department website for various information based on what the community involves. But I mean, this system is very flexible. The solution is very flexible when we look at how you want that to be built out and really how you want that to look. And our designers will give you some information, some good insight on, hey, we've seen these communities do these different parts of the websites like this for this information that you mentioned to us, and develop this design based on other websites in your area. So very, very flexible for those department heads. So if you have some ideas click OK. So if you have some ideas on, hey, I've seen this other website look like this, or I have ideas on communicating with residents like this, bring that to the project, bring that to the implementation team, and then really talk through that so we can give you some strategic, ideas on how to really put that information to the forefront.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Richard. Questions council might have? Very good, Richard. Thank you for your time tonight. Is there anything else you would like to say to us before we turn it off?
Just I really want to thank you for the time. I'm definitely honored that you guys allowed me to join and kind of talk about our solutions. And I hope everyone has a great night. And if you have any questions for me, of course, you can always send me an email or give me a call.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Have a good night, everyone.
There we go. Yeah. We have taken the motion off the table. We've had some discussion. Discussion doesn't have to be over. Is there more discussion? So in your packet, there are two proposals from Civic Plus. One is a basic proposal. The other is a proposal that includes another item. Perhaps if we move forward tonight, saying that, yes, we would like to use Civic Plus, would you like to also consider each one of those proposals in our discussion?
Yes.
Okay,
Consider the.
all right. I would ask Brooke Rouge to come to the microphone, if you could, please. Just because the mayor is not going to be able to speak as fluently about these proposals as perhaps you would be able to. One of the things that Mr. Jones did do on page 7 of the blue pages, he talked about those 6 phases. When we go to page 8, excuse me, when we go to page 8 of the blue pages, then you see prices, a one-time investment of $8,000 and then annual maintenance of $2,000. And then there is another item on page 9, which is an alternate plan toward the bottom of page 9, where it breaks the investment down into 4 years, which means that the amount of money paid out each year is not as much. Does council have any opinion about that?
You said there was an added feature or something, or just that we could break it down into 4 payments instead of 1?
So there's the basic package. Now, correct me, Mr. Rouge, if I speak out of turn.
Right.
Okay, so there's the basic package, which is on the blue pages, which is the CMS package. And that is that's the package of the $8,000 and the $2,000, and then the alternate plan, which spreads it out into 4 years.
So it'd be $4,000 a year, 4 years.
Right.
Yeah, it's splitting that 8,000 up for the first 3 years. And every year, there's an extra 5% technology fee. Like he was saying, they update their software and there's continue doing training. And so he'll delay that till the 4th year. So that's where that extra 100 is for the 4th year. So that's why he put it on there. But the 8,000 will be split up over the first 3 years, and you'll be paying the 2,000 for service each year on top of that. So that's why it's 4,600.
The difference, if you want to compare apples to apples over 4 years' time, it would cost us $101 more if we went with the alternate plan
The 4-year
over
plan.
4 years.
And Mayor, what are you encouraging us to do?
At this point, I'm not encouraging us to do anything until all the information is given. On the red pages, which is the 311 solution, is the part of it that adds several more components to the package. And I'm not the one to speak fluently about that. If you'd like to do that, Brooke,
Okay.
fire away.
The reason that was added was because there was a discount if we did it before the end of the year. So I don't know if there's incentive to necessarily do it right off the bat. But what that will add is a component that allows us to connect with community a lot easier. He was mentioning texting back and forth and people filling out forms. There's actually an app that comes with that module where, for example, if somebody's frustrated with a pothole in their area, they can snap a picture of that pothole and submit it as an issue, and it will be routed to the correct department person that needs to respond to that. And when they update what they're planning on doing and, you know, when it should be addressed or whatever, it could be added to the website, which would also update the app. So the citizens could see that action's being taken and understand that it might take 2 months before someone gets there, instead of they're feeling like they've been ignored. So there's communication that can go back and forth with that.
So the cost of that item would be a one-time implementation cost of $3,600. And then, and the annual services, which is a 2-year fee, would be $3,000. So, so that adds an expense on it. My opinion is that we probably should not go with that add-on item, but I wanted to bring that to the forefront of the discussion. You asked, what would I like to see us do? I would like to see us do the, do it on an annual basis rather than on the 4-year term. We have funds to be able to fund it that way. And we do that, then we are committing to 1 year rather than committing to 4 years, if for some reason we would like to change, or we get into a scenario where we're not happy with service. We get into a scenario where we want to make a change, then we're not confined to the 4 years.
Where would we pay that out of? What account?
Thank you for asking that, Mr. Doyle. I would recommend to pay that out of capital outlay account where we have reserves. And then when we do our budget process, then we go ahead and budget those funds to spend out of a general government item.
Can we discuss possibly creating a line on next year's budget
Sure.
for that?
Sure.
And at the top of page 8, the prices that were given were a 60-day hold. So do we know if this is actually what our cost will be, or is it something different? We didn't ask Richard while he was on the phone. Do you happen to
Yeah,
know?
Richard would have the final say on that. What he said was it should still be, but that was when I talked to him at the beginning of January. And so now we're just a couple days past that, so I don't want to say for sure, but as far as I know, it would be the same.
So if we choose to press forward, he gave me the indication that it would be the same.
The same, yeah.
Okay.
So if we wanted to press forward, that's what we would do with that assumption.
I have no reservations that this is the company that needs to be putting our website together. I've done extensive research, and so have you, and so have you. I think it's our best option moving forward, and we know that there is a huge need.
I agree.
Other comments?
I'm in agreement. It is a huge need and it needs to get done.
We'll wait till Mr. Doyle gets back to his chair before we call for vote.
Can I ask a quick question? Have we looked at other website companies?
Yes.
Okay, how many?
Yeah, let me go, let me go through that. We have looked at three others. Civic Plus is by far the most recommended. It is also the most economical. All right, we've had sufficient discussion. If there's no more discussion, is there any more discussion? Call for vote.
What's the motion?
Oh, what is the motion? Okay.
Take it off the table.
We only motion to take it off the table, that's correct. So we would need a motion to move forward with Civic Plus as our website vendor with the, notating the one-time investment of $8,000 and the annual maintenance of $2,000.
I'll make that motion.
Wait, I thought that you wanted to not do the 8,000. I thought you wanted to do the yearly installment.
No, I wanted to do the 8,000
Okay,
because I
just
wanted to
clarifying.
tie us only to 1 year instead of tying us to 4 years.
Thank
Well,
you.
and I don't think we can commit out for the 4-year. Right, so-
That's correct.
So we'd have to do that.
Okay, so make a motion.
So Brakefield moved made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second, Sherman. Call for vote.
Shropshire,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Chipwood,
Yes.
Rexfield,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to go ahead and, since we're there with the discussion, I would like to go ahead and move to item B, under Mayor's Report, discussion possible action regarding employing the services of Brooks Digital as per the proposal, pending council approval of web processes with Civic Plus. We just approved Civic Plus. Would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion Shropshire, second Smith. Discussion.
Just want to make a point again on page 8, that the services of Civic Plus include graphic design, which is a custom design. It includes content development, it includes staff training, it includes secure hosting, ongoing customer support. I still do not see the necessary need for a contractor to be a middleman on this, based on the question I asked Mr. Jones. Strategic initiative is usually put together by an internal staff member. I'd also like to call to attention that we just rehired a special projects clerk, Lisa Long, that could gather that information as well. This is not to discredit Brooks' qualifications whatsoever. I feel like he would be best used in the visual presentation piece of this, which would be content, and could be paid based on that content, not on a contractual basis.
Thank you. Other discussion?
That was actually put out for bids, and we didn't have anyone put in for it.
Budget Personnel asked us to go out for bids on that, and there was no one else that replied.
I just kind of want to echo off of Councilwoman Sherman. I did find it interesting in this presentation as we asked that he did mention that it was clerks and basically staffers that were doing it in all these other cities. I think if we have somebody available that we can have do that, and the training is there, I have to agree. I think we have the resources on hand available now to us, and I think we need to use the personnel and the talent that we have.
This is not building. Civic builds the site.
That's
Civic
correct.
builds the custom design and the
That's
graphic
correct.
design. I agree, we need content. We need good content. But to hire someone 20 to 25 hours a week for an extended amount of time, to me, is not good use of tax dollars.
I appreciate that. My experience through time in doing these things, because I am a dinosaur with these things, I've always depended on somebody who was professional to gather the information, someone who is professional to interpret the information, somebody who is professional to put the information in front of the IT people, so we didn't miss anything. So I didn't miss anything in the process. That has been successful for me, and that's certainly the reason why I go that direction.
And I'd like to say we have internal staff that are professional.
We don't have internal staff who have built website. We don't have internal staff who have the IT experience. I want to do it right. I want to do it. I don't want to have any regret. I don't want the process to be laborious. We have staff who, here's a for instance. Do our staff have enough to do to keep them busy? Well, we keep them busy most of the time, and they're behind most of the time. So what tasks are we going to take away from them so that they can do this work? And how much time is that going to take? I would ask our city clerk Eva Smith, if she could make comment. Would you turn the microphone around, please?
We do have a lot of work going on, and nobody's probably ever really caught up. I don't know that anybody has ever really worked with the computer enough to know a lot of the things that would need to be performed or included or done. I know it wouldn't get worked on regularly because we would be called away a lot to conduct the business in the office. We don't ever get anything finished but what we're pulled away to something else. So I'm afraid it would be very time consuming. I don't think we might do the best job we could do because we're not qualified and we don't have staff to just dedicate to that.
May I ask, if we didn't have Brooks Digital, who would this fall on?
I guess we'd have to split it up or designate one person and then shuffle the duties around in the office for whoever felt like they
Well,
might could do it.
And when we say do, all it will be is a series of questions of how does your department work? How do we give us how your department works, and then we will build that site for you. Then we will come back and train you on how to use it. So I think when we're saying do, we're not defining it.
What's your understanding of what is gonna have to be done on our end in order to maintain this site and do it on our part to make this work?
Well, visual presentation, that's content, that's pictures, is what that's going to be. I see Brooks being very involved in that piece of it. Strategic initiative is usually an internal staff member that pulls all the information that is needed from each department. It's usually an internal person because they understand how each department is working. So they would be that person, police and fire and clerk and code enforcement, all of those pieces. They pull all that information to Civic Plus, then Civic Plus does that build, is the way that I understand. And Brooke has talked to Civic Plus on multiple occasions too. And then that implementation happens after Civic Plus comes back in and trains. So whether they have time to do it or not, they're going to have to sit down for hours and be trained on how the system works. It will be a process if they start communicating with the public through the website and not just phone calls.
Did they not say we had 8 hours of training?
Yes, they
And
did.
the first 2 hours was gonna be basically how to log onto the system? Well, that last 6 hours is gonna have to be a whiz bang to get everything in there that we need to know. Because if you're gonna take 2 hours just to learn how to log into the system and how to actually turn the program on and do that, you're gonna have to put a lot of information in the last 6 hours.
I think if we look at I'm just kind of sitting here listening. One of the things that stops progression and growth is fear. Obviously, there's some unknown about this from all sides. So, as I say this, I'd ask everybody to kind of have an open mind. Mayor, reluctantly, you call yourself a dinosaur. I don't think that's relevant in this situation. We look at the number of cities. They've done over 75 cities in Oklahoma successfully. Joe, when you initially gathered this information as you were campaigning, you found that those were successful stories, right?
Correct.
I know that some of those cities don't have the talent that Pryor has. I'm pretty positive a company as big as Civic Plus that does as many, and that's only 75 in Oklahoma. They do them nationwide, right? I'm pretty sure they're not gonna leave us high and dry and be like, y'all bunch of dinosaurs, we're out, peace, and leave you trying to figure out how to log onto a website after 2 hours. I'm pretty sure they're gonna commit themselves to making sure that we understand our side of the program. That's what we're paying. At that point, they will be our customer. We're paying them to do a job for us. We go in and we make sure that our people are trained. There is no doubt, I don't think anybody on this council for 1 minute is gonna question the workload that the clerks here at City Hall have. And they do a great job. I'm not here on the everyday. I can't comment, nor would it be fair for me to comment on why or what or the reason there. That's irrelevant. The idea is that we have to take our fears for a minute and we have to cast them aside. Okay? We have to set our fears aside and say, we're gonna pay several $1,000s to a pretty successful company to set us up a website. They're gonna tell us what we need, and we're gonna provide it. If we don't know, then it's our responsibility as the one paying for the service to say, how do I do that? And at that point, they'll come in and say, you do this. We can't lock ourselves in on it being a solid 2 hour to log in or a solid 8 hours. And, you know, when the timer goes ding, they're going to pack up their suitcase and leave. I've worked with many companies that do stuff like this in the past, and they don't do that. They don't become successful by setting a timer and walking out of the room. If Pryor Creek requires 20 hours of training, I'm sure that for what we get, we'll get it. They'll make sure that we know how to work our website. They want us to be successful because their name, when you scroll all the way to the bottom, it's going to say Civic Plus. They want to see it successful. I really think for us to just say that we don't have the talent, we don't have the ability, we're just going to throw our hands up and call ourselves a dinosaur. Technology is getting easier. For those that fear technology, or Brick, you'll agree, it's getting easier to do. The training materials are there, the resources, it's becoming more common. I think we can't get hung up on, we can't do this. We just can't do it, and sit behind this wall of fear that says we're not going to progress if we do it ourselves. I think the real success comes when Pryor says, hey, we did the training, we figured it out, we got it. And
So first of all, I don't sit behind a wall of fear, I sit behind a wall of experience. So when I asked Richard Jones this question, you work with Midi-Cities, so tell me what your experience is. What's the benefit of having somebody on board who is going to be a go-to for you at any time you need them to be a go-to? What's the benefit for the cities and also your processes? And he says, by far the cities that provide that are ahead, and the cities that provide that are able to do. We're able to function kind of unhindered because there is somebody on board at the city, at those cities, that is our go-to at any time we need for them to be. And that's how he answered that question. And that further supports. I didn't ask him to defend anything. I just asked him that question, and that's the way he replied. So I'm certainly in favor of having somebody on board during that process, especially during that build process. After the build process is completed, having someone who is also a go-to, I think, is important, and that has also been my experience.
I agree with the mayor on the aspect of having somebody there. We could do this as a one-time deal, or if we feel in the future that we need to proceed with this in this same manner, then that's our decision. But if we decide in the future that we no longer need this process, then we can switch. Just like we're going with the one-time payment. If we don't like what we get, we're not going to proceed with the procedure. We're going to make changes, and that's what it's all about. We need to get our groundwork set up, get rolling. If this is what we're going to do, and take it from there.
Other discussion?
Yeah, my thought is, I can see what y'all talking about, but I just hate piling on more work to the ladies in the office and same pay. You know, if we're gonna pile more work on them, I think they need to be compensated more for more work. So if we got somebody that's already an expert in it, not be behind the ball getting trained up, unless there's someone else within the city like our librarian, she seems to be pretty savvy on computer stuff. But again, it's piling up more work on her.
My board president is telling me no.
Okay, all right, so,
But you realize this initial process doesn't have anything to do with being tech savvy. It's gathering data.
It's just gathering information.
right, but I'm talking about still, it's gonna be putting more labor on them.
Not knowing what we're getting into. You say it's easy, possibly easy. Let's go forward with this, and if it's gonna be easy, then we know what we need to do in the future. But going into an unknown, not knowing how easy it's gonna be, I can't see,
Well, I don't understand if it's been so doggone easy, why does their website look like it does?
well, when you talk about taking the first 2 hours to learn how to log in,
Well, that's what he said. I mean, that's kind of what I was going
I
on.
think we're jumping back and forth between concepts here, guys.
Yeah, not specific.
The thing we also have to keep in mind is, and, you know, the contract with Mr. Brook, I always get your last name wrong, so, sorry. The initial 12, 13 weeks is gonna cost us over $8,000 just for him. That's contracted. So we got 8,000 for setup, 2,000 for annual cost, another 8,000. We keep talking about the 8,000 for this setup. Look, I'm gonna say this as the budget committee chair, the one that did 99% of the budget this year, because we got it, we don't have to spend it. Okay? We have $1 million in reserves, that's awesome. But look how much a simple project could have, what kind of an impact financially that could have, what kind of if a lawsuit were to come up. We'd need those money. We need to make sure, you know, we've got all of our capital outlays coming out of one account. We've talked about this over and over. I think we gotta remember that there's so many layers of cost to this setup, and I think what Councilwoman Sherman is trying to say, what we're trying to say is, the cost is adding up exponentially. There's no doubt that technology is the way people are. Do we have any studies to say how much traffic we have on our website now? What kind of traffic are we getting now? There's gonna be a curve where for the first 6 months, I would guess, I don't know the number, there's no, you know, there's no set number that says for the 6 months or 12 months that people are even gonna know we've done this. There's marketing that has to be done, that's gonna cost us. You know, you look at running a simple Facebook ad, anybody out here that has a business that knows you're paying for, that's $60 a whack just for that. Now, it may not seem like much, but it adds up, guys. We've got to remember that this is taxpayer money. And yes, gosh, we have great people in the community we could make contracts with and pay and do. But as the budget committee chair, I'm seeing a whole lot of spending in this quarter. And we got a lot of stuff to do. We have stuff that we talked about at the budget meeting where, you know, some of our great department leaders are trying to find grants to help soften the blow on things. You know, generators and machinery and software and things that are literally a necessity for our first responders and their services. If those grants don't come through, then we gotta come up with several $100,000 for that. But we can't get hung up on, well, it's easier to pay somebody and be done. Well, sure it is, we know that. But the idea is that that's just the initial, for the first 12 to 13 weeks of development, Brooks Digital will meet with officials, anticipated to take 20 to 25 hours per week, $25 an hour. You know, yeah, it's a savings versus other groups, but my gosh, that's still over $8,000 just for that. I think where
To gather information.
to gather information that can be, you know, gathered internally.
So my experience is that the value of that pays off as we go. That's an estimate. This initial build phase is anticipated to take 20 to 25 hours. What if it takes 10 hours? So Brooks not gonna hang around for 25 hours. He's gonna hang around for the 5 hours or for the 10 hours that it takes. So this is an estimate, this is anticipated. Does it cost the city money to do that? Yes. Is there a payback? Yes, I believe that there is, to assure that we do it the right way.
Well, if it takes us 2 hours to figure out how to log onto a service, I don't see Brooks leaving in 5 hours. I think we're getting hung up on the things that we want to push forward and favoring that, and then the things that we don't want, we're favoring the way. I'm just trying to throw out here, we gotta look at what we're spending. That's where I'm at. We gotta look at what we're spending, and there are so many layers that are gonna come onto this. Yeah, after year 2, there won't be the full initial build cost. There won't be, that's great. That's the idea of building it. I caution the layers of funding.
But there will be additional content, so everyone needs to be aware of that. That will always be updated. That's where I see Brooks more
Yes.
as the visual presentation piece, providing that content at a per item.
And the updating as we
Well, Civic will update
move.
it, you will provide it to
Correct.
Civic, they will put it in.
We have to provide that
But
information.
we provide the pictures and the updated content and the events and that information, which could be done internally once everyone is trained.
What's also cool about Civic Plus is they're continually updating their processes.
Correct.
Why can't we use basically both? Why can't we use our people here to gather the information you're talking about, and then use Brooks' expertise to actually put it into the program? It would be less hours he would be working, but
That's what your vision is, and that's what my vision is.
maybe not working 20 to 25 hours like that, but I mean, maybe if he's got the information, it wouldn't take him as long to put it in there, but would he, gathering the information, maybe we could use the administrative people to do that.
So.
I don't know, I'm not a tech person, that's the thing.
This is new territory for us. All of us here are trying to do it the right way. And hats off to all of you. Any other discussion?
I actually have a question for Brooks. What do you kind of expect to fulfill your time for those first 10 to 12 weeks? And that 20 to 25 hours?
Okay. Well, the estimate came from a couple different cities that I contacted to find out what they did. And both of them said that there was more need for somebody in the build process, and they said that they had somebody that was 20 to 25 hours. Both of those cities said that. And they hired somebody, both of them actually hired somebody internally to just do that. That was their only job, so they were just part-time. And they said afterwards, they ended up hiring, one of them ended up hiring them full-time. One of them, that person ended up starting their own business, doing that kind of stuff, and they continued hiring or working with them. But they ended up being full-time to help maintain and update stuff and create content going forward. But the initial process of getting things together and getting stuff to Civic Plus, I think the less hours we would need to spend would be if our site was already updated, because there's less stuff that needs to be gathered. So not knowing how much of it is actually outdated, just the stuff that I could tell is outdated, then that's where that estimate comes from. But if there's actually not as much information that we need to dig out and contact people and find out who's using what and who needs what, then there'd be less time.
And what type of things are you talking about as far as what's going to need to be covered? Is it just events and like city agendas, or is it going to be as far as ordinances and every aspect of what's going on in the city?
I was looking at it as every aspect, just to fill in with what's needed. If people don't have time or the ability, then I'd be able to fill in with that. And so that's where that 25 comes from. So if there is more people that can do that and get that information, then it would be less hours.
And what would you expect, whether it's you or anybody else, how long to dig out all that information, how much time a week, based on your experience and what you've been able to research?
You mean if I was just doing it all on my own? Is that what you're
Yes.
saying? Then, yeah, 20 to 25 hours, I think, per week to get all that stuff together.
And is that based on contact with other cities that are set up
Yeah.
in similar situations where they've even hired things like Civic Plus to address web designs?
Mm-hmm.
Who are the two cities, both of the cities you talked to?
I have them in my email. I can look that up. One was in Maine, and I think one was in Kansas. I don't remember the name of the cities, but I can look them up. I was in contact with.
Were they
it was
similar to our size? Was that
December.
the?
Yeah, I was looking for
Okay.
rural areas that were roughly our size,
Okay.
so.
And same thing when I talked to Collinsville, that's what they did. They pulled somebody clerk and that, she did that. That wasn't her initial job, but then as she got into the process, then she became that point of contact. Like Richard said, there's usually two. You don't want to get too many, but became that point of contact and then was given a new title. So, progression.
Yeah. Whether it's someone in-house or someone that you're hiring on, having that is important. But, yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you for the discussion. Hearing no other questions or other discussion, we'll call for vote.
Yes.
Chipwood,
Yes.
Brakefield,
Yes.
Sherman,
No.
Doyle,
No.
Ketcher,
Yes.
Shropshire,
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll go back to item number 2, department head reports. If needed, building inspector.
This evening. Hope everything's going okay. Just want to give you a heads up, we are running late as far as trying to get stuff booked in as far as doing inspections and stuff. So we've been telling the contractors to call 2 to 3 days in advance of when they need it, so we make sure that we're not holding them up. We understand we will have emergencies come up that we need to cover too, and we've been doing that, so. But we are trying to work with them so that we're not delaying anybody, especially with all the school stuff going on right now. Also, if I could speak for the fire department, James received a phone call and had to leave. He asked me if I could give the report. They had, in December, had 124 runs, and they're on pace for about the same for January so far. So he just asked if I'd pass that information on to y'all.
Very good. Any questions for Kenny?
No.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Emergency management, is Johnny still here? All right, thank you. A golf course? No report. Library? Recognize Carrie Raritt.
You guys have our December numbers at your seats. December is usually our slowest month of the year, just with all the holidays and everybody doing all of the things that you have to do in December. But I think it's important to note that we still had 4,512 people come through our doors in December. We also don't do programming in December for the same reason. So instead of listing how many people came to a program, I just put that we had 448 uses of our online resources, which are test preparation materials, language learning, ancestry, and genealogical research, those sorts of things. The only other thing I have, our friends group is having the fundraiser, and I have to say, if you don't have your ticket, you're gonna have to wait till next year, because we sold out in 9 days. So we're really excited about our murder mystery party that we're having. Do you guys have any questions for me?
On the 448 uses of our online resources, potentially, how many of those would be students?
It could be, I honestly don't know, because we don't track who is on there. A lot of our schools have similar resources that we do. So we have EBSCO, which is a database full of journal articles and magazines and newspapers, and the schools also have that resource. So some of them, the students would probably not use just because they have it at school. Our Learning Express resource is the test preparation. My hope is that a lot of students are using that. It's a really, really great resource, but it also has some good tools for job searchers too. Anybody who's looking for a job or needs to beef up their resume or figure out a cover letter, it has information and tutorials for that as well.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Parks Cemetery? No report. Police?
No report unless there are any questions.
No report. Thank you, Chief. Recreation Center? Recognize Rachel Sordahl.
I just have some
Thank you.
numbers of like our business and stuff over the past several years.
Thank you.
guys can compare, and then just facts and about the rest. Does anyone have any questions?
Anybody have questions?
You did some moving around of the equipment, I noticed. Any reason or any, just your board? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Just it seems to like flow better with that kind of setup and keep you guys on your toes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Street Committee? No report. I believe there are no petitions from the audience today. We'll move to Mayor's Report, item C, discussion possible action regarding approval to proceed with prescribed process as defined by the Federal Railroad Administration toward establishing Pryor Creek as a railroad quiet zone. We established that we would put that on the table and remove it from the table today. We are not prepared to have that discussion at this point in time. I would like to entertain a motion to extend the table until the first meeting in, our city attorney, am I doing that the proper way? Extend the table to the first meeting in February.
Yes, that's fine.
I'll make that motion to extend
Second.
the first meeting in February.
Thank you. Zach, and second, Ketcher. Call for vote?
Chipwood,
Yes.
Brakefield,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Ketchum,
Yes.
Shropshire,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Item D, discussion item only, discussion for purposes of gathering information from council on positions and opinions regarding compensation of council members for required attendance of meetings outside of council and committee meetings, such as when serving as abatement hearing officer. Discussion, and I would defer over to Council Doyle.
I'll make the motion for discussion.
Motion
I'll
Second.
Motion Doyle, second Shropshire. Call for vote?
Brakefield,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Ketchum,
Yes.
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Chipwood,
Yes.
Discussion.
So, have this conversation the same way we had this conversation at budget and personnel meeting last week. As we move forward on this process, these abatement hearings, the abatement process, I think through excellent teamwork, we're seeing good progress as we clean up the city. You know, I say we, this is Cheryl Lau, one of the clerks, our officer that's helping us with this through the PD. I think the teamwork there, working together to make the process as smooth and as flawless as possible with such positive, and I want to reiterate, positive political pressure on some of these cases. We're seeing a lot of progress. We're seeing, you know, homeowners cleaning these properties up themselves. There's a few that are going to come up where the city's going to incur some initial cost for removal of properties. We budgeted $80,000 for that this year. So those funds are there for that purpose. But what we're also finding is that it's, when the process is done correctly and the process is followed and kept up with, it requires, you know, it's not a bring them in and drop a judgment and done. The process is that we're giving some of these people that we know are not gonna be able to afford, you know, a $10,000 demolition right here and now, give an opportunity to do it a different way. We may bring them in on the first hearing and say, hey, we're gonna give you a couple weeks to clean this up. And then in this first couple weeks, I want you to get, you know, an auxiliary building torn down, the trees and shrubs cut, and the trash picked up. We'll see you back in a month. Okay? That does a couple things. First thing that's doing is that's telling us who's the game player and who's not. Who's gonna work with us, who's not. Then, if those people have done everything that we've asked, you know, I believe that a court should be merciful and just, and part of that is, okay, you've done what we asked. Step 2, now do this and this. And when they stop playing the game, then we drop a judgment that says, you stopped working with us, okay? So what this is doing is it's allowing citizens to reach out to some of our community church groups and other organizations that are helping them. It's getting community involvement in the cleanup process. But you're also watching, you know, you're watching neighbors clean up their stuff too. You know, when the neighbors down the street see that a house is being cleared up, they're gonna start cleaning their own stuff up and making sure that they're not the one, you know, that's next on the list. And so it also gives us positive feedback as a city. Hey, thanks for doing that. I appreciate that we finally got that house at XYZ cleaned up. That's awesome. And so, again, the positive political pressure, but it is time consuming. Up until now, this has been a volunteer spot. Somebody's appointed or just volunteers to take it, it's done. But I'm also gonna say, if you look at the track record, not a whole lot has been done. So now that we've got the process moving, we're also working with Mr. Ritchie to kind of clean up little nooks and crannies on that process and procedures to get it right. But it does require time. And, you know, I said this in budget meeting the other night, I do not want to do this the rest of my life, which means somebody else will take my place when I'm done doing it. So in respect to that, I asked the budget committee to pass up to council to consider, you know, compensation for that position. The discussion is to be, you know, we have special meeting rates, $50, $75, $100. I don't for any minute think that it needs to be the full $100, but something that says, we recognize that a great quality of your time was spent doing this. It's a service to the city. And so with that, I ask the council to consider for current and future abatement officers to adjust our policy to add for some sort of level of compensation for that time, just as with budget meetings or personnel meetings or insurance ordinance meetings. You know, our time is compensated for that. And I think if we can continue to move this forward in a positive manner, I think we'll continue to see our city cleaned up at a lot less cost to the city than it would have been if we didn't do it this way.
How many abatement meetings are we having currently?
Eva?
Is it a once a quarter?
No. So we had, I think we're up to about 6 or 7 meetings now within the last probably 8 or 9 months. I would think we had a break on a few because summer came and went, and then we started again in October. I think, is that about right? October.
I believe that's right. I think this fiscal year you probably had 4.
Yeah, so far, and we've got another. We're doing about 4 to 5 homes at a time. 5 seems to be what we start out with, and then people don't show up, and that number goes
How
down.
long do those meetings normally?
Well, it depends on how many we have and who shows up.
Yeah.
We had one situation that required quite a bit of conversation, quite a bit of discussion back and forth. We've had some where the property owner doesn't show up, but the potential property purchaser shows up and then, well, gosh, you're not the one we sent the letter to, and you haven't bought the property, you haven't even bought a permit for that, so we're not really gonna discuss it with you. And then we're, you know, it's not just
So do
the
you do,
council members' time, but it's, keep in mind, you know, Kenny shows up for some of these meetings. Eva, you've been to a few?
Maybe one.
Maybe one, we'll say a few, just for heck. Cheryl shows up at these. The police officer that does this shows up at those. So you have a number of people that show up for this. Chief is at, you've been at every one of them. You know, so it is a time consuming. I would say on average, half hour to an hour.
Do you do other work aside from the meetings regarding those properties?
Well, you know, you
I mean, I've seen you do some of that,
yes,
work.
yes. There's a fine line that can't be crossed because of conflict of interest. But, you know, and you need to be informed. I need to know where these properties are. I need to really know what they look like. I don't go onto the properties. That's not my job. But there are times where I've, you know, driven down this street or that street to look at these homes. You know, it's not a typical position within the council. You know, it requires having some, you know, assertiveness, but it also requires compassion.
So I would say also Zach has taken training about with the abatement process, so he knows what he's doing with that, and is doing a real good job, real good job with the process.
Did Budget Committee make any decisions on this? Did they pass a $75 or what?
No.
It was only discussion?
We passed it up for discussion. I wanted it to be a full council. My desire was for it to be a full council discussion. I only think that's the fair and appropriate way to discuss what that should be.
So council, you've heard from Mr. Doyle and Ms. Sherman and myself. Any other discussion in that regard? Any volunteers to be the abatement officer after Zach?
Zach's doing a fine job.
You know, I will tell you, there is an element of this that, you know, when you sit up here and you know, in my job, I deal with the public. And many of my customers have been, not many, there's been 3 or 4 people that I deal with on a day-to-day basis in my personal life that come up and I'm looking at them going, oh, geez, today's judgment day for you. So, you know, you have to realize that this is a position that you have to be able to set aside personal relationships, and you have to really have, you know, that the justice, the arm of compassion and the arm of, you know, now's the time to make a call on it. And I am glad that so far we've had minimal expense to the city with the way that Cheryl and the officer and I have done. Chief, is it appropriate to leave his name out of that? I keep referring to him as the officer. I would.
Officer Humphrey.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to give credit where it's due, but I didn't want to say
Code
that.
Enforcement Officer.
Yes, Trent Humphrey is fabulous, and he provides pictures and he checks these properties. It's a very positive process that's taking place for something that could be grim and
Well, I might
grievous.
say that also Officer Humphreys has a great temperament for that job.
Yes.
Which is one of the reasons that it makes it successful. Any other discussion?
Sounds like we need to go back to budget and send it to ordinance and insurance for further discussion and to be corrected up or correctly processed.
Well, what would the council feel would be appropriate compensation for that? The special meeting rate?
About
or
$2.50.
$2.50? Hey, if that's what the council says, let's go for it.
I am just kidding.
How long do these meetings typically run?
Tell you this, I put more time into this than the budget committee, so. You know, we get what, 50 for those committee meetings? So, you know, I would say 50,
We bet
treat it
so.
as another committee meeting, another meeting. It's not a special, you know, so my suggestion would be the 50 per meeting.
That seems to be appropriate and fair. Any other discussion? Now's the time.
So are you gonna make an emotion for?
No, this is discussion only.
Okay.
And so what we will do is we'll forward this on through channels to ordinance insurance. It will need to go to ordinance insurance before it goes back to council.
Okay.
All right. Item E, discussion and possible action regarding tasking the Prior Economic Development Trust Authority to bring to council recommendations regarding prioritizing non-exclusive bond projects. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Motion Breakfield, second Doyle. Discussion.
What is your intention behind this item, Mayor?
My intention is to give the Economic Development Trust Authority direction from council regarding these. We know that whatever action happens from the Economic Development Trust Authority is for the city's benefit. The Economic Development Trust Authority would like to know the council's mind and would like to have direction from council regarding how to proceed with prioritizing these items.
So my thought, and I'll put this in after being in the meeting the other day. I was the only council member at that meeting, and I know it was during the day, but my input would be, you know, the EDTA needs to know what these projects are going to represent. They need to know what exactly is needed. I had a discussion with an individual from the Shatoma group. The Shatoma is on that list of things. That is a property that we own that is in gross disrepair. They wanted to know what process to take, and my knee-jerk reaction was, go to the EDTA and tell them what you need. After saying that, I think it would be appropriate to task the trust development with hearing what those groups ask for. You know, let them know what's on the table. That's a good place to start. So send the soccer organization, the ball fields, the PYO task force, out of the grave, right? All of these other groups, send them to the task force and give them the gathered information, the data that they need, so that they can begin discussing while we move forward on tasks that we have to get done first.
So, Council Doyle heard from Sertoma regarding the senior citizens building remodel. Have any of the other council heard from citizens in regard to any of these other non-exclusive projects?
The biggest thing right now is people are wondering when we're gonna start with the projects. That's the biggest thing. We just have to tell them it takes time to get everything rolling and processed, but that's the biggest question that we hear, or that I've been hearing.
Our big thing is, we're starting with our police and fire building, and we've got architect drawings done, we've got all that. It's just hitting the go button. That really isn't gonna be anything they're gonna do. That's just
Yeah,
already in
so
motion.
prioritizing these things doesn't have anything to do with.
Right.
With the police and fire.
And so before we go forward and say, hey, here's your list of things that were hypothetically promised. Here's this list. We're gonna get done what we gotta get done first. We're gonna do this police, fire, library, get that stuff out of the way. Find out what we got left and say, okay, now that you guys have heard what they need at all these different groups and all the stuff around town has told you what we're needing, here's what's left of the bond money. Have a heyday. But they can't do that if they don't know what they have to work with. Like, we don't know what we have to work with.
Another thing too, and I'm probably not, correct me if I'm wrong on this, we're gonna end up making a payment. And then the money we pull in from taxes goes into a special fund for that. Any money that we have in excess of the money that we make on taxes, if we can build that amount of money up to perform some of these other projects, correct? Isn't that the way that's gonna go? Instead, we were first talking about 13 million, then it ended up being 10 million, but then we have a payment that we have to make. The total amount of taxes that we pull in do not have to go to payment.
That's correct. That's correct. So that builds over time.
So that builds over time, and we can use that excess money that's building to do some of these other projects as it builds.
As it builds. I think as we're going forward, I think after sitting in that meeting, and I think with persons in this room, it was Mr. Ritchie, Mayor, me, couple immediate, Terry, you were there, and Tim Lawson from the PIP was there. I think the concern was, from the task force, was, well, what are we supposed to be doing? What are we doing? So as,
And that's the reason for this.
as
this
Mr.
discussion today.
Sordahl was nominated to be the president, one of his first comments was, what the heck is this meeting all about?
Who are we?
What are we doing? I think it would be important to let them gather data. Let them gather why are we wanting money to go to the soccer fields? Why are we wanting money to go to the PYO? They don't know that stuff.
So you're hearing, I'm hearing Whitaker Park restrooms, okay? I hear that a lot. I hear the internet component, so I hear that a lot. So mayor doesn't need to prioritize these things on his own. And so we need the input from our council to hear from our citizens. And that is what should drive, that's what should drive how we prioritize these things.
And remember, and just because you weren't up here when this discussion was happening, there's a lot of people in town that think, well, why do they need to hear from me again? The list was already made, so now when is it going to happen? So I think to follow up with what Zach is saying, we need to re-engage those people before they become disheartened that these things may not happen, and let them speak to the EDTA or gather the data for the EDTA on these projects, because this is just a list. This does not, maybe there's a couple projects in here that some more in-depth information has been put to them, but it's just a list. Whether we're hearing it now or hearing it a year ago, it's got to be revisited
Right,
and
because things like
explained.
the bike trail, some of that's gonna be covered under other things.
Yes,
And
that's
so-
correct. And
I don't know if
the
I'm
park,
clear,
the
but I
park
just-
pool, being covered there's an ongoing study, in fact, that's about.
So I think it would be important for the EDTA as they move forward to now, now that they've formed, they've signed their paperwork, and they've done this, they've discovered officers. Say, hey, here's the things that were presented when we went through this as non-exclusive list of projects to maybe be considered possibly. Go out and say, hey, research these things and find out what needs to be done. Their job is to do that footwork for us.
Do you know who the
So,
point person is?
so I'm not sure that it is the Economic Development Trust Authority's responsibility to do that legwork. That legwork, in my opinion, is legwork that council and mayor listening to citizens. So the citizens are released to have input,
Sure.
Now, those economic development folks, sure, they want to have a listening ear, sure they do, but they want direction from council.
We had a point person that came and did a little presentation for each of these.
Mhm.
If you want me to go back and get you each of those point person to make contact with, that would want to get that information together for you to present to the ETA, I'd be happy to do that.
That would be great. I would appreciate that.
Well, I just think, and again, I think it's important for them to be educated. Knowing the panel, they're gonna wanna know, what is it about the city library additions are happening? Now, that's just the first one I could read off of there.
And those panel are action people, those
We
people.
want them to be successful.
Yeah.
Sure.
They want to be successful.
Yes.
So I would suggest that the councils put forward that the EDTA use this time to educate about these projects. If that means that this contact from the Sertoma goes to their next meeting and says, hey, this is what we came to you about. Now, they know that the council's got to give them the direction, but if they got to make a decision and they got to do the footwork, they're going to want to know what they're footworking on. They want to know where that trail's going. It buys us time because we're not ready for them yet. It's really what that is, buys us time. Unless you got a project for them to start on tomorrow, we don't need them yet, so let's give them something to do.
Because this list has been a point of contention for a long time. So we might as well give a full scope of each project and let the EDTA really digest and see what is needed and the cost. If we're going to hand it over, let's give them as much information as
So
we can gather.
they want to hear from us about what our priorities are.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that we need to approach it as anything as a point of contention or as a point of, this is my turf and this is what I want to do. So Zach heard from citizens this week. I've heard from citizens for the last several months about internet. I've heard from citizens, especially during the summer months, about the park restrooms. And those are right here. Those are right here on the list. I would have no problem turning the Economic Development Trust Authority loose and saying, these are projects that we can readily identify right now. So I don't have any problem turning them loose on those projects. I've heard those discussions, and perhaps the rest of the council has too. I mean, I hope you have.
So you're asking us to prioritize, not the EDTA to prioritize?
I'm asking council to prioritize.
This, because that's what the ballot says, is the council, the
That's
mayor and
correct.
council will.
That is what the ballot says. And the EDTA is looking for direction from council
On these projects or other projects? That's where I'm,
on this list of projects. So they want to give input. They want to give input. They want to do their job. And we need to, I think it behooves us to task them to do the job.
So then let me ask, because I guess as we do this, reading here, the authority to bring to council recommendations regarding prioritizing the non-exclusive bond projects. If the council were to do that tonight, we'd be right back where we were a year ago when we put this list out. So I guess what I'm asking,
So
Mayor,
we have a motion and a second. It would be appropriate if we table this motion. It would be appropriate to table this motion and to come back next meeting, having given thought, having asked citizens what priorities are. I remember some of those discussions. I was not sitting here. I was sitting out there, and I was listening, and I was absorbing.
I would suggest if we're going to do that, and we want to hear from citizens, some of us don't work in town, some of us don't have the opportunity to walk around and ask people, hey, what do you think of this list? I think it would be beneficial if we're going to do that and we want to hear their voice, some kind of town hall or public meeting to say, we're here to listen. You know, we're a year later, some of these have dropped off because of other situations. Where are we at now?
Very good. Excellent. Excellent.
And have that in a place that's, big enough to house a good, maybe, other cities have done different variations of this, where they give them paper, or they have them write it
Right.
down, they put them in teams, and
Right.
they divide up the city and say, hey, what about this area, this area, this area? We got to come up with a plan on how we want to get that information from the public.
So perhaps a way to start is to go back to that list, Jill, and ask them to come back to council and make a presentation.
Just so I completely understand, are we trying to determine what projects we're gonna give the EDTA now to work on? Or are we just going to prioritize these things, and give them a list of our priorities and how we want them to work on them?
Yes, we'd like to give them, in my opinion, we'd like to give them a list of priorities to work on. These are bond-funded, listed bond-funded projects.
I think one thing we need to consider when we're prioritizing these are things that are needing to be taken care of quickly in order to preserve equipment that we're buying now, like the golf course, the new maintenance building. When we're buying all this equipment, and I'm understanding that the maintenance building is leaking and there's issues there with that building.
So
in
buy new
particular.
equipment and take it out there and
Let
and
us
let it
run
get hailed on. huh?
Yeah, I think that would be something to seriously consider. And the restrooms at Whitaker Park are something I've heard for years, even prior to being on this council, and the condition in which they are in.
I think we need to find out exactly where we're at as far as what it's gonna cost for library and for the police and fire, and find out what kind of money we're gonna have actually left over.
Joy, I couldn't agree with you more. I think if we look at this list and, you know, this trust authority is a different body of people. They come from different backgrounds. They are people of our community. That's about what we have in common. People willing to serve. So, you know, when we do this and we come down and they say, well, I think what we're gonna do is this is hypothetical, so don't hold me to this. They say, hey, we're gonna do, you know, this, we're gonna prioritize this. We may find out that, like I said, James may not get his grant for things that he's trying to get grants for. BK may not get a grant for a generator that's gonna cost us several $100,000. Now we're another million out now, and we're, again, go back to what I said earlier, there's so many layers of funding. We have to watch what we spend. This list is the intent of this, when we wrote this out, and Mr. Ritchie sat here for about 20 minutes trying to gnaw out the right way to word it, was this list won't start till those first projects are done. And I appreciate the desire to move forward, and we gotta start it now, and, ooh, gumption, but we gotta make sure that we have the funds for the things we put that task force together for, knowing the body of that task force. If we don't get it right, several of them are gonna think we're just a silly old council that doesn't know how to spend money. So,
First of all, it's not a task force, it's an Economic Development Trust Authority, so.
yeah, sure. I mean,
So-
wording. I'm not gonna argue over wording, Mayor, but the idea is, we can't start these projects till we're done with what it says
I'm not
here.
I'm not saying that we need to start them, I'm
We
saying
can't even
that-
prioritize them because we don't know what
So,
we'll have funding.
But but you're exactly right, there is a process that we need to go through to be able to prioritize these things. And I think it's important that we get a process started. So, do you agree?
I think it's important for that trust authority to educate themselves. And I think it would be our responsibility to tell them, look at the projects that were laid out before and understand some of them have changed, but it might behoove you as a trust authority to start looking into why some of these people wanted it. And that easiest way is have the contact from the Sertoma show up to that trust authority meeting in a public setting and say, this is what we ask for. This is what we need our kitchen enlarged. We have windows that are rotten to the core. We have bathrooms that need complete plumbing redos. $100,000 at the Sertoma. Here's what I'm asking for. They don't make any decision on it. They're not taking any action on that. They now know when that's on the priority list, what's gonna happen. What I'm saying is we're not ready for that step. So let's educate these people that wanna know what we're planning on doing with what it is we're planning on doing. That's all I have.
We have a motion to task the Economic Development Trust Authority to bring to council recommendations regarding prioritizing non-exclusive bond projects. So, very good. We can task the Economic Development Trust Authority to bring that to council, and we can educate them in the process so they know about that. At this point, council does not want to make any recommendations about prioritizing any of these non-exclusive projects. Am I hearing you all right?
Correct.
Until we find out what kind of money we've got.
What they're doing, and then if the Economic Development Trust is gonna prioritize them as far as for increased economic development, they may leave some out that need to be taken care of to take care of our city properties.
Council Doyle, would you like to make a motion to amend this motion to include educating the Economic Development Trust Authority regarding the non-exclusive projects.
Yes, I will amend my motion to that.
So you basically want to take out the word task and put educate in there? Would that work for you?
That would.
Brakefield made the motion.
I'm sorry, Brakefield, would you like to amend your motion?
Yes, I'll amend my motion.
And who seconded the motion? Doyle. Would you like to second?
I'll amend my second.
Thank you. Thank you for the discussion. Call for vote.
Sherman?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Petrus?
Yes.
Shropshire?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Chipwood?
Yes.
Brakefield?
Yes.
For clarification, would you please read the motion that was made and passed?
Discussion and possible action regarding educating the Prior Economic Development Trust Authority to bring council recommendations regarding prioritizing non-exclusive bond projects.
So who's going to educate them? You just moved to educate the E EDTA.
That would be our responsibility to basically
I'll do it.
inform them.
So, Council
I'm pulling
Sherman,
the point of, I'm pulling,
Council Sherman had a good idea there to pull those folks who have made some presentations in the past.
So I don't want them to be confused, and I don't want us to be confused about what action you just took. But you've said a motion to educate the Prior Economic Development Trust Authority to bring to council recommendations regarding prioritizing non-exclusive bond projects. So you're going to educate them to bring to the council a recommendation regarding the prioritization of the list.
That's what the motion was.
It's kind of
the
worded
entire
in-
middle piece needs to come out.
I mean, it passed, so I just want to make sure that that's what it says. Correct?
Yeah,
Because all we did was sub in the one word.
Maybe we need to redo that.
Well, the bell's been rung.
I guess
We
you're
can
right.
come back in another meeting with an agenda item
Okay.
to do something to that before we actually implement it. Next item.
Yes. Item F, discussion possible action regarding tasking Prior Economic Development Trust Authority in recommending Prior Creek Downtown Corridor Economic Improvement Projects.
I'll make that motion.
Motion
Second.
Chitwood, second Doyle. Prior Creek Downtown Corridor Economic Improvement Projects.
So is this money separate from the bond money? Is that what we're going
Yes.
to discuss?
Yes, however, there is bond money. It doesn't, it amounts to
Reference.
estimated around $60,000.
Is anyone here from our Main Street that could tell us what projects they have that they're wanting to see accomplished? No? So I don't think we can speak to that.
Here, there's no one here from Main Street now. There was, but there's not right now.
Can I ask a question? It may not come out right, but my thought process on that is, why would we want somebody from Main Street when why would Main Street be the contact on that?
I think Main Street may be one of the contacts on that. They may not be the contact, but they may be one of the contacts on that, in my opinion.
Do we?
So proposition number 2, that was on the bond, sets aside tax dollars for developing downtown corridor, or doing downtown corridor economic improvement projects. And so the reason why that's on here is because we have responsibility with those tax dollars. The Economic Development Trust Authority would like to have direction from council in that regard.
I guess where I'm going on this is, let's define the downtown corridor. What is that area?
It's defined in the contract that they signed,
They,
Main Street signed.
okay.
Northeast first, southeast first.
So if that's an area that directly affects Main Street, and Main Street is the recipient of funds as it is, do we run into a conflict with somebody who receives tax dollars for their organization to be telling us what we're gonna do with this? I kind of see the correlation.
No, I can speak to the conflict real quick.
Yep.
The Economic Development Trust Authority's purpose is to perform things that are beneficial to the citizens of Pryor and the city of Pryor. So when you have an item here that says discuss and possible action regarding tasking the EDTA in recommending Pryor Creek Downtown Corridor Economic Improvement Projects, what you're saying is you're telling the EDTA to look at our downtown corridor and make a recommendation or a report to council of what they think would help develop the economic condition of our downtown corridor, which is what they were created to do, is to make a recommendation, and then if you guys give them a task to go do it. So
But that's
this
not-
doesn't have anything to do with distributing any money, nothing whatsoever. It is asking them to examine the corridor and make a recommendation to the city council of what they think would help it develop economically. So that might be anything. They might come back and say, you know what, you ought to do a program that would help merchants with facades. You ought to do something that would help with landscaping downtown. You ought to do something with whatever. It's just letting them have a slate to go look, because they can't do anything on their own. So you're telling them, go look at that, come back to us with some recommendations. What are your thoughts? Then you guys sort through that. No conflict.
So how would that, Kim, and I'm sorry, this may frustrate you, but
No.
how is that different than the comment that Mr. Dillard made? Dillard made? We have an individual that has a business and businesses and buildings in that downtown corridor that sits on that trust authority. Mr. Dillard's concern was, I'm a banker. If this trust authority is gonna be talking about real estate and developers coming in, I'm gonna jump on that. And I walked away and I told several people, I've never met the man, but he made a quote that I really respect, and he said that his integrity is worth more than the deal. And his desire was, if that's gonna be the problem, I'm stepping off as a conflict. The trust authority assured him that he could redact himself, or whatever the word is, and he says, yeah, but the appearance, my name is on there as one that does it. So where do we say that he's one element of that trust authority, Mr. Dillard?
Who are you talking about?
Right now, I'm talking about Mr. Dillard.
Yeah, but who are you thinking might have a conflict?
Mr. Miller.
Okay.
So he's the
Scott Miller.
president of Main Street that is charged, that we give monies to help that downtown corridor. And now we're gonna say, okay, put him on the group that's gonna decide what helps that area, that helps his business directly.
That's where that logic breaks down, is that they don't decide, you decide. The trust authority doesn't decide what project happens downtown. The trust authority doesn't decide where to spend the money downtown. The trust authority doesn't make any of those decisions. They bring a recommendation to the council, and you make those decisions. So they don't have the purse strings. They only do what you, as a council, task them to do. So there is no conflict of interest between the decision maker that says this is the deal that we're gonna do and the recipient of a benefit from that. You don't see that?
No, I don't.
Well,
And
because the trust authority can't make the decision to spend money. You do. This council does.
So if we have one area
So far as a
that,
conflict of interest is concerned, there is no conflict of interest. If one arose, that doesn't keep you from being on the board. A conflict of interest between the city of Pryor doing business with Orscheln's doesn't keep you from being
no,
on the council.
I'm not
All
talking
it
about being on
does
the
is it
board.
says, in that particular event, if that conflict arises, you abstain, and you do not take part in that decision-making process. So, I mean, we have conflict of interests that occur from time to time. The remedy is abstain. So, no conflict of interest exists.
Well, even if the person thought they weren't doing a conflict of interest and it was a project that was in their best interest, but the council decided, well, I don't think it's a good project for the city, so we're not gonna do it. They put the idea forward, but it didn't get approved.
Well, all ideas on this item are gonna be for that downtown corridor. So any item that's done and dealt with under this is in that downtown corridor.
But Councilman Doyle, the bond that was voted on said that the 0.05% was for economic development under this downtown economic development. So tasking them with looking into what could possibly be done downtown to promote it in its economic development is absolutely proper under the language that the people voted under, and it's proper under the trust document. I believe that actually what it really said was just what you were saying. It says to create new jobs and retain existing jobs in the main street corridor of the city of Pryor. So we're talking about making new jobs or retaining jobs downtown. It really didn't say anything about building up downtown or doing anything for the downside, anything as far as upgrading downtown. It just says to create new jobs and retain existing jobs.
But the thing we're not, that's not the point. The point is where are those funds going to benefit? And if, I brought up Mr. Dillard because I appreciated what he said. It was enough of a concern that if it, his previous comment to that was avoid even the appearance of evil. Many of us understand that concept. His thing was, I'm on this list and it's gonna look like I'm a conflict, like I have the inside idea on what's happening.
Well, you have to remember that we decided on the economic development personnel, per se. We decided who those people were gonna be and where they were coming from. That was our decision to make residents and non-residents of Pryor on that committee. Same, so you
We
have-
didn't pick those people.
Somebody picked them.
Those people were elected and
I nominated,
suggestions were given up.
nominated them and this body,
Sure.
this body approved.
But nonetheless, our decision was to pick people that lived in the city and a few that did not live in the city to make these decisions for us. To bring the recommendations before this council to do these projects. That was our decision.
Okay, so how do we get back on topic here with letter F?
So proposition, just so I make sure I'm on the right track. Proposition 1, you want us to prioritize. That's what we discussed. We're going to try to prioritize. Proposition 2, we're going to ask them to come up with ideas and prioritize. Correct?
Correct,
In a nutshell? Okay.
correct. Any other discussion? Call for vote.
Doyle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Shropshire,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Chitwood,
Yes.
Brickman,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Brakefield, Sherman.
Yes.
Item G, discuss and possible action regarding naming members of the Budget and Personnel Committees, Zach Doyle, Troy Shropshire, Brianna Brakefield, alternate Randy Chitwood, and City Attorney Kim Ritchie, as the Fire and Police Negotiations Committee for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion Chitwood, second Smith. Discussion?
Yeah, I had expressed interest on being on there before I came on council. I think it makes sense. You got a council member that's a police officer that kind of knows first responders, be part of the negotiation team.
Very good. The reason those were on the motion was because that was the way it was done last year.
Well, it was done because it was the budget and
The budget
and
committee.
personnel.
Budget Personnel Committee.
It's the task of that committee. That's all. It was no,
Would any of those members like to yield a seat to Council Ketcher?
Question about that, is there a limit to the people that can be on that negotiation team?
Yes, there would be, on the team.
Well,
Well, there would be a limit to how many council could be on that team.
And I think we might need to look into, if, Kim may already know this, but does the ordinance already state with our forming of committees that the negotiation team has to be the budget committee?
There's
No.
not actually an ordinance on it.
Okay,
I thought that there was.
okay.
And I went back and looked, and there was not. What I was remembering was that in the contract with, in our collective bargaining agreement, it names the budget committee, along with the mayor and the city attorney. It's not an actual bargained provision, but it's just kind of like a whereas type
Okay,
clause. So it doesn't have to be that way. It's just been that way for a long time. Yeah.
thank you.
So it makes sense that somebody from Budget Personnel would be on that committee. It also makes sense that if we have a law enforcement officer among us, that perhaps that would be good as well. So,
But
back to my question before, are there any of those who would like to yield that responsibility over to John Ketcher?
So Kim, if that's in the collective bargaining agreement, we can't change that till next year, correct?
It's not a bargained for term,
Okay,
so,
which I just want to be clear.
yeah. So it can be changed right now. I mean, we don't have to change the contract. If you guys want somebody else on it, it's fine.
But we are limited to the.
Now I'm hearing silence.
But we are limited to the amount of people.
To the number of council members that would be on that. Yes.
Then still.
We're not limited.
We can't have more than
Three.
3 council members present for any one of those sessions, because as soon as we do, then we
Right.
run the risk of getting into a council meeting.
Yeah.
And the reason why we would have an alternate there would be if one of those could not attend, then the alternate perhaps could attend.
So there's really no reason that we can't have more than one alternate?
You could have,
You could have several alternates if you wanted, yeah.
As much as I would like to be on that committee, taking into consideration that Mr. Ketcher, Councilman Ketcher, is way more knowledgeable in that field than I am, I would yield my position for him.
who made the motion?
I did.
Who seconded?
Smith.
Do you want to amend?
Would you like to amend your motion?
Yes.
Ms. Chitwood?
I'll amend my motion to yield Brianna Breakfeld and have John Ketcher in her place.
Council Smith, would you amend your second?
I amend my second.
Is there any more discussion?
You said you can have as many
As many alternates as?
alternates as you want to. Can she stay on as an alternate?
If this body would like for her to stay on as an alternate, then this body could do that.
Yes, I would very much like
Would you
that.
like to stay on as an alternate?
Mhm.
Would you like to amend your
I was gonna
amended
amend my
motion?
amended motion.
To include Council Brakefield
So do we
as-
need to name a first alternate and a second
as
alternate?
the second alternate,
Is that what that is?
Don't be the second.
correct? Would you like to amend your second to include Ms. Brakefield as a second alternate?
Yes, I will amend my second.
Is there any more discussion? Thank you. Call for vote.
Petra,
I think I need to abstain.
Shropshire,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Chitwood,
Yes.
Brakefield,
Do I need to abstain?
No, you don't.
Okay, yes.
Sherman,
Abstain.
Doyle,
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 5, City Attorney's Report.
Item 5A, explanation of the annexation process by the city attorney. I'm going to keep it really brief. If you have any questions, ask. Annexation is the extension of our boundaries of our city. That can be done under a couple of different provisions. It can be done under cities initiating the annexation. That is, you guys decide, hey, we want to just annex that part. So if it's done that way, then you're going to have to either get the consent of the majority of the interest holders out there, or you're also going to have hearings, and it's purely initiated by the city to take that in. If it is initiated by the person who owns the property, then it's basically just the reverse process of that. Both of them require public notice and some public hearing. We've done that in this case. Once you have filed the proper petition and given the proper notice and had the hearing and received public comment, pro or con, then it's up to the city council to then vote whether or not to go ahead and proceed and annex or not. There's been, like I say, we've had the hearing, all the notices have been given. I'm not aware of any contest at all. And so when you adopt the ordinance annexing, it's completed. You've annexed it. Any questions? Okay.
We have a question back here.
In the audience.
I just have a question.
So we will recognize, Ahmad, we'll recognize your question. Come to the microphone. You are not on the agenda, but we will
I sure do
yield.
appreciate that.
That's all right. Go right ahead.
Okay, the property that's being annexed, all right, it's next to my property. How would that affect mine? Is that mine gonna be included? It's not gonna be included? Okay. I don't mind being annexed, but I just wanted to be prepared for it, and I would love to be in a city, and I would love, to create more, revenue for the city, but I just wanted to be ready for it and, do my part. Trying to work out with my neighbors, all of that, so hopefully we'll get everything straightened out, but I just wanna make sure that it's not gonna affect me at the moment, while, being annexed.
It's gonna have no effect on you. Your property's across the line from what we've legally described as being annexed. So the Mate property is coming in. It'll be part of the city. You'll still be in the country.
Okay, well, I want to be in the city, but I just want to be in the city at the right time, and I couldn't tell, from the description, I read it 3-4 times, and I couldn't tell, where the boundary are. So I sure do appreciate your explanation, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Ahmad.
Thank you, thank you.
Very good. Item B. Entertain a motion to waive second final reading and approve as written an ordinance annexing territory of the city of Pryor Creek, Oklahoma, and assigning zoning classification of commercial general to the annexed territory. Is there a motion to waive the final reading?
Make that motion. Second.
Motion Chitwood, second. Smith, is there any discussion? Hearing none, call for vote.
Shropshire,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Chitwood, Brakefield,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Petra,
Yes.
Item C, Mr. Ritchie.
Item C, discussion of possible action regarding approval of a resolution confirming appointment of the trustees to the Fire Economic Development Trust Board. All these people have already been brought before the council. You've all voted, they're on it. However, the trust document itself indicates that there'll be a resolution, so I've drafted a resolution, and that's what you're voting on, is just passing the resolution that's required by the trust document.
Is there a motion?
I'll make it.
Choya.
Second.
Motion Chitwood, second Ketcher. Discussion? Hearing none, call for vote.
Smith?
Yes.
Shipley?
Yes.
Redfield?
Yes.
Sherman? Yes. Doyle?
Yes.
Ketchum?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Item 6, discuss possible act on consent agenda. Item A, approve minutes of January 7, 2020 council meeting. Item B, approve payroll purchases through orders, approve payroll purchase orders through January 24, 2020. Item C, approve claims for purchase orders through January 21st, 2020. Item D, acknowledge receipt of deficient purchase orders. Item E, approve December appropriation requests. Item F, discussion possible action regarding allowing Chris Hardy to hold a Booklahoma fundraiser in the Graham Community Hall on February 14 and 15, 2020 for a mission trip to Guatemala. Item G, discussion possible action regarding recommendation to council to approve hotel motel final expense report for Northeast Oklahoma Area Artist Show held October 11th through the 25th, 2019 in the amount of $2,000 from Hotel Motel PAAHC account 757555097. Item H, discussion possible action regarding recommendation to council to approve hotel motel grant application from Lake Area Softball Association for the Bring the Prior Softball Fields Back to Life project from October 2019 to June 2020 in the amount of $550. Excuse me. Item I, discussion possible action regarding lease purchase of two 2020 Chevy Tahoes at the state contract price of $32,897 each and four Ford F-150 pickups at the state contract price of $33,413 each. Financing $246,332.46 through Bank of Commerce at 2.25% for 48 months for the Pryor Creek Police Department from Police Department Vehicles Capital Outlay Account 444455418. Other quotes received: Arvest Bank at 3.94%, First Priority Bank at 4.5%, RCB Bank at 2.9%, Red Crown Credit Union at 3.99%, Welch State Bank at 3.64%. Item J, discussion possible action regarding the purchase of 17 point-blank Alpha Elite vests at the state contract price of $822.96 each for the Pryor Police Department. Excuse me, $12,344.40 to be taken from Police Equipment Capital Outlay Account 444455424, which was approved. $344.40 over, but still in budget in the 2019-2020 budget, and $1,645.92 to be taken from the police new hire account 02-215-5034. Item K, discussion possible action regarding declaration of an emergency and approval of expenditure in the amount of $7,900 from general software account 02-201-5260 to Intertribal Software Consultants Incorporated to migrate and configure Laserfish to the new server and install the latest version. This will be an upgraded subscription to the current Laserfish software and will cost $5,400 each additional year for support. The current support cost is $2,444. On Wednesday, January 15, 2020, IT discovered that complications with the server at the police and city clerk's office were due to Laserfish not being upgraded and this needs to be fixed immediately. In seeking quotes, Police Department was informed that Laserfish companies are not allowed to compete. Therefore, they are not allowed to give quotes. City of Pryor Creek has been with Intertribal since 2006. Laserfish is the software used to store and retrieve data quickly and securely. Item L, discussion possible action regarding nomination and appointment of Joe Barnes to alternate seat number 6 of the Pryor Creek Planning and Zoning Commission, term expiring September 30, 2022. Item M, discussion possible action regarding nomination and appointment of Eric Hansbrough to seat number 2 of the Pryor Creek Hotel Motel Tax Allocation Board, term expiring April 30, 2022. Are there items that council would like to remove from the consent agenda?
C.
Item C. Are there any other items? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve all of the items except for item C.
Motion.
Second.
Motion Ketchner, second Shropshire. Call for vote.
Chipwood?
Yes.
Hartsfield?
Yes.
Sherman?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Ketchum?
Yes.
Shropshire?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Item C, approve claims for purchase orders through January 21, 2020.
Make that motion.
Motion Sherman,
Second.
second Smith. Discussion.
Okay, last meeting, we had a pretty lengthy discussion. We never really resolved it on dates of purchase orders. So I wanted to maybe just bring that up again real quick. The minutes that, it says minutes on this sheet. So we have everything that we approved last meeting is what is in this packet, so that everyone understands that. The issue with this is, we have only signed these, so there is no way for me to know what everybody else signed. So as I looked through the orders, the purchase orders from last meeting, there were things in here that I had questions about. How easy would it be to provide just a list of every purchase order for the council that went along with what we signed? Is that something that could be done for us so that we could actually know everything that we're approving? Because when we approve this, I'm actually only approving the ones that I signed. Which now, in hindsight, I see some things in this that I would have had questions about.
But also, when we write minutes on this is a general ledger report. The minutes in the agenda packet are the minutes. So what was discussed, what was voted on, this isn't the minutes.
This is what was approved in the minutes.
For this council meeting. The minutes you're approving in this council, there's a list that you're approving, and that's the list of the ones you approved. The way the purchasing works is, of course, we have guidelines. The department heads can't do anything over 1,000. The mayor can approve anything from 1,000 to 2,500, and then it comes to council. And that's been set up, I'm sure, so that every purchase order doesn't have to be looked at by every council member and the mayor. When, like, James gets ready to order those cars, he's gonna encumber the funds. Those have to be encumbered before you place your order. So that purchase order is gonna be encumbered. It doesn't show up on a payment report until after he pays it. And that is when we bring the purchase orders that you all signed to council in order to be approved. So there's no report that records those until after you've signed them. Cheryl they go back into the office, Cheryl invoices them and sets them up for payment. And that takes place the 4 days following council.
Right, and I understand that process. It just bothers me that I'm approving.
You're willing,
I'm willing participant in approving everything that
and you
everyone
are welcome
approved
to
without
come in,
seeing it.
Like, a little bit before council and look through all of them. They're public records, so you can look through them. You could come by the office, we might be able to somehow, I guess we could just include the encumbrances, and you all would be looking at not what, just what we're gonna pay, but the encumbrances that have been.
That would work.
Okay, then do you still want the ones from the minutes also from?
Well, it wouldn't be,
before?
it wouldn't be necessary at
It
that
wouldn't be
point.
necessary, we'd just be moving
Okay,
what
I
we
can-
see
I
to
can see
before they're paid.
What kind of a report we can run before the payment?
It's kind of what I was trying to bring up the last meeting, and it turned into a little more of a heated issue than it needed to be. The idea is that if there's something on here that, and I'm not saying anybody is or isn't, but if there's things on here that we need to question, or purchases that I shouldn't be approving,
Well, one problem would be if, let's say they had to go to Walmart and they encumbered the funds, they went to Walmart, they purchased them, and, you know, up to 2 weeks later, they come in and you say, I'm not gonna approve that. Well, they've already got their merchandise. I don't know. I think it's set up this way so that the department heads have the authority to do what they're required to do. And then, you all approve them at council. Each council person would have
what is the software program that, I know the answers, what is the software program that runs this?
Cassell.
Have we not several times gotten the approval for council to have read-only access to Cassell? We've approved that as a council.
Nobody, it's not out of our server, there's no way you can, are you talking about accessing that at home?
Yeah, this isn't, yeah, no, not necessarily at home. I mean, if I need to come in and look, that's on me. That would be for me to come here, log on and look.
Yes, you're welcome, we can run a report in, or you can, we can pull it up and you can look at it anytime that we're here.
We have a certain number of accounts that we're able to use with Cassell. So if we add accounts, then it's fairly expensive when we add accounts to that software.
We just have a certain number of licenses, so like the police has some, and then we, in our office, have some, and sometimes we have gotten into a situation where we couldn't access because all the licenses were being used.
So if the council as a whole had one general account that the council as a whole would use, say the account username is council member, then any of us could use that one account, obviously one at a time, but that would only utilize one account versus
So
more.
what you would be able to do, what you're able to do right now is able to come in and look at all of those purchase orders and look at them one at a time and see what signatures are on them and see what products have been purchased.
Those build up from, Cheryl's already started building them for the next council meeting. And as the department heads receive their product or encumbered, then receive, she sets those aside specifically for council.
But it wouldn't be difficult just to run an encumbrance report.
No, we can run an encumbrance report, but it won't mean they're getting paid.
Correct.
Like if
Right.
he orders cars and it takes, 6
Right.
weeks to get them, that's not gonna be paid until, actually approved for payment until, we bring the purchase order up here and he's received. the
Well, and I think that would be fine. That would just give us a heads up of what's coming down the chute. I mean, but it would just let us know beforehand for, the things that I sign. Like Jill said, the things I sign are all I see. I don't have a clue. There's a few things, as we go through here, I have questions about, and I'm not discussing that right now. But the idea is, I see things through here and I want, okay, what was that for?
But most of that is gonna be picked up and they're gonna be using it, it's gonna be.
Sure.
This is gonna be after the fact, because when they go to purchase whatever the product is, they've already encumbered the funds. They bring their invoice in as soon as they pick up their product, and that's ready for payment. If we're doing it that way and you all have questions after the fact, I don't know how they're going to be able to return the product, or, if they get.
It wouldn't be any different than what we have right now. I mean, these don't get paid till we approve them. if, I mean, and some of these have, you know,
But-
Walmart receipts on the back of them.
True, they don't get paid until you approve them, so they're approved tonight and taken back in and invoiced and paid at that point, after you've looked at them. But if I bring encumbrances to you and they have already picked up their product, they, you know,
Sure.
I mean, if you discuss it after they've already purchased or picked up whatever, what are you gonna be able to do?
What
We
is,
show it
what
to
is
you
your
early.
deadline for purchases before the council? Is it Friday afternoon?
And it's supposed to be, but we don't always do that.
I mean, do you have purchases over the weekend?
No, but Monday, we do Monday, and even Cheryl does purchase orders on Tuesday if there's a need. If somebody, you know, has to have some, or they purchase, I mean, you know, like sometimes, let's just say, something breaks. Maybe the plumbing at the library, or, you know, something happens. She has to call a plumber, she encumbers the funds, well, they're gonna go ahead and fix it as long as it's within the limits. But we may not get that purchase order to you, I mean, you're not gonna see that it's been paid until the council meeting. Well, you know, what if you don't like that purchase and the work's been done? I mean, I don't know.
Right, but it does give us the ability to at least ask the question.
mean-
Because I don't think we've ever just said, no, we're not gonna do that.
It's not a matter of rejecting, I mean, it's not a matter of Drew Stoughton the thing. That's not what it's just giving
Watch
us.
it now.
Hey,
He would laugh.
giving us, he would laugh. It gives us the opportunity to say, before it's paid and done and out of, and finalized, to say, explain this one. Because as it is now, we get this and there's, like I said, there's things on here that we both had questions on and
But the
done.
problem is, almost everything you're signing tonight has already been picked up. They're using it. I mean, they've already got the product or whatever. So if there is a question, I don't know what we're gonna be
I
able to
mean,
do.
if you don't trust your other council members to
Well, it is not about trusting
Or-
the other
Yeah, we
council
can-
members.
no.
That's not what it's about. It's
Like I
just
said, you're
the
welcome
date
to
on
come
there.
in 30 minutes early. We have them in here at 5 o'clock. Come in and look through all of them. They're, you know, public record. And we can get in encumbrance, but
Well, I think what we're asking is it possible to come up with a report that shows these as a whole? Like, everything that's signed tonight, can I flip through and look and see? It has nothing to do with trust, John.
not exactly because.
Listen, no, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with, it's just, we're responsible for those things. And it,
They're not paid, they're not invoiced until after you look at them. So there's no report that says, this is what we're paying tonight.
So,
There's encumbrances for the period, you know, for the 2 weeks, but they're not on.
so those reports are done after the process is completed.
Yes.
You know, so that report that you see, it's not always gonna be complete, but the fact remains that any of that paperwork is open to anybody who wants to come in and look at it.
True.
So,
And the report is complete, because that's what she actually pays, like this
Correct.
Friday.
All of this.
She'll pay those. Anything that if there's anything you wanna pull out from those, you can, and she won't invoice them and go ahead and cut a check. But the ones prior to, they've already been paid, and, you know, most of them have been picked up and they're already using the product.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted some clarification because we left that discussion kind of up in the air last time. So, thank you.
And we can do encumbrances, and that would
Okay.
give you a heads up, but it doesn't mean they're gonna be paid at any
Got
certain
it.
time.
Okay, thank you, Eva.
okay, we have a motion and a second on item C. Any other discussion? Call for vote?
Redfield,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Doyle,
no,
was that a yes or no?
that was a no.
Okay. Ketcher,
Yes.
Shropshire,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Chitwood,
Yes.
Okay, item 7, committee reports, budget personnel, Doyle.
We just had one last week. Our next meeting is going to be on February 11th, 5:30, I'm sorry.
Item B, ordinance insurance. Sherman,
Pushing to beginning of February is the goal.
sometime first week of February.
That's the goal.
Thank you. Street, Smith,
The 28th.
on the 28th.
Yep, we'll try to have a meeting 28th.
Mighty good. Item 8, any unforeseeable business? Item 9, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Call for vote. That was Ketcher and Smith.
Sherman?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Ketcher?
Yes.
Shropshire?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Chipman?
Yes.
Wakefield?
Yes.
We'll call to order Prior Public Works Authority. Item 2, approve minutes of January 7, 2020 meeting.
Make that motion.
Second.
Motion Chitwood, second Smith. Call for vote.
Doyle?
Yes.
Ketcher?
Yes.
Shropshire?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Chipwood?
Yes.
Wakefield?
Yes.
Sherman?
Yes.
Item 3, any unforeseeable business? Hearing none. Item 4 is adjourned. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for vote. Smith?
Ketcher?
Yes.
Shropshire?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Chipwood?
Yes.
Wakefield?
Yes.
Sherman?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Thank you all for attending. We are adjourned.
Well, have fun tonight.